Hey there and welcome back to XCOM 2. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Legend Ironman walkthrough of XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. Last time we left off, after studying the Advent Stasis suit, one of the last projects in the Shadow Chamber, we also cleared out a landed UFO with a mixed squad of veterans and fresh faces, and apart from a minor mishap with the Icarus armor, that mission went pretty smoothly. One small note then, before we get things going today. Thanks to your numerous comments on the last episode, I have decided that we will not take out any more alien facilities unless the Avatar project progress bar absolutely forces us to, which it shouldn't. We have cleared out several of them already. I showed you how to do it quick and easy with just a single Reaper in episode 54, and there's really no point in blowing up more and unnecessarily prolonging the series. For challenge missions like the solo run we did with Starfall, I'd prefer actual missions where we are forced to take out the enemies we encounter, rather than these facilities where you only need to plant the explosive and escape to win. With that being said, let's begin. Since we acquired a good chunk of Illyrium last time, let us now manufacture a Wraith suit in the Proving Grounds. This is the only suit of armor that we do not yet have, and while it is probably also not really worth grabbing at this point anymore, let's do so anyway for the sake of completion.
Sounds good, Commander. I'll let you know as soon as the project is ready for deployment.
Afterwards then, we head onto the bridge and into the world map, where we are, yet again, presented with the same rumor that we have scanned several times over the last few episodes.
Avenger plotting new course.
However, with no other options available, let us once again grab some assorted loot. Doing so then also quickly gets us to the completion of another round of Psi training for both Esteban Flores and Matt Lewin. Both of them only have one more ability to unlock before they have learned everything a Psi Operative can learn in this game, and we have kept Solace as the last ability for them, simply because it is not as useful for us considering we have the Mental Fortitude Continent bonus active.
Commander, the aliens continue to make progress on the Avatar project. If we're going to slow them down, we'll need to move fast.
And well, the aliens might make progress on their project, but so do we on ours.
Our actions have succeeded, and the Elders grow fearful.
Completing this Covert Action here unlocks the Tactical Analysis Resistance Order, which we will of course activate as soon as we get to the next monthly report.
All skirmishers, all those freed from the Elders' bonds, are eager to hear your orders, Commander.
For now, it is time to select the next Covert Action, and we will actually go with the one right at the top here, conveniently reducing Avatar project progress and giving us a promotion. A promotion that we give to Praetor Mox, just so we have a Colonel level skirmisher by the end of the series too, currently the last class where that is not the case. Sharpshooter Smoopy accompanies him just to potentially soak up the wounded risk, not to mention that Mox's bondmate Nicholas is still tired.
We'll get the job done. Don't worry, Commander.
Speaking of bondmates, with Radonis back out of the hospital, we can now improve his bond with Grenadier Echo Sierra, and there's really no reason not to do this, even though at this point it is questionable whether or not the two will actually see another mission. As we wait for our mission today then, the rumor scan is completed, this one actually handing us another Advent datapad, a somewhat unexpected source of intel.
Setting course for Sector 1, the Arctic.
And intel is also what we will grab now as we head back to the Reaper HQ, waiting for something better to show up on the world map.
Hate to do this, but you're the only one who can pull this off. You know I'd go myself if I could.
The gateway is primed. Is the subject prepared?
Ready. I hardwired what was left of the Codex brain into Rover. It should be emitting the same signal the Codex used to pass through the gateway.
Excellent. Let us begin. We've already seen the Codex opening a similar rift in the field. I am sure your device will be fine.
set to record across all spectrums. Remember, go in, take some quick readings, then come right back through, okay? Whoa! Are you seeing this?
It appears our signal has been received. Increasing power.
Doesn't look like any place we've been before. Or any place on Earth, for that matter.
Perhaps this is the source. The aliens' seat of power, if you will. Secure beyond any physical limitations.
Only one way to find out. Go on. We're counting on you. That is definitely not fine, Doctor.
The process did work. There was an instant where the device was in between locations. However, once that occurred, the gateway called for a second signature, an organic signature. When we could not provide one, it generated a sort of feedback pulse.
Obviously.
If the Codex creates the door, this organic signature must surely be the key.
Well, we better make sure we have the right key before we try again. I would hate for this to occur to something organic.
Agreed. I'll report our findings to the commander immediately. We are now prepared to autopsy the body of the powerful being we recovered, Commander. I feel that we may be on the cusp of attaining a complete understanding of this avatar we have long sought.
Alright, some more plot progression here. Using a rover with a codex brain attached, we take our first peek through the Psionic Gate, and even though Tigan and Shen here both mentioned that the place on the other side looks like nothing we have ever seen before, I personally find it somewhat reminiscent of the Chosen's Ascension Chamber, although what we saw also seemed to incorporate several more of these Psionic Gates. Unfortunately, to find out more, an organic signature seems to be required, and perhaps the now unlocked Avatar Autopsy here can give us a clue of how to acquire such an organic signature and how to potentially step through the Psionic Gate. In any case, it is the final research project in the Shadow Chamber for now, so it's the only thing we can really do here for the moment.
This creature represents a near-perfect fusion of human and elder DNA. Though remarkable, it appears as if the creature were unfinished, perhaps why we were able to ultimately defeat it. Still, this can lead me to only one logical conclusion.
We had such hope for you.
I believe we have found our avatar.
So, Avatar Autopsy underway, this one not entirely without the Elders noticing. We'll see whether or not that results in any further complications down the line. For now, we can keep scanning, which completes the Wraith suit, a light armor with an added dodge bonus, and the ability to pass through obstacles, such as walls, potentially very convenient, albeit a bit niche. The aliens then also put their next dark event into effect, making progress on the Avatar project once more.
Commander, if we want to set back the aliens' work on the Avatar project, we should hit one of their facilities as soon as possible.
And this now actually means that for our next Guerilla Ops, we might only have 2 missions to choose from. And the progress is quickly reversed anyway, as our next Covert Action is completed.
We had some wounded soldiers requiring treatment after that last covert action. With a few days rest, they'll be ready to get back into it.
So, Praetor Mox, unfortunately injured, hopefully not for too long, but he did earn himself the final promotion to Colonel. Before we take care of that, let's launch the next Covert Action. Once again, we're going for a promotion with this one. We don't have more than 1 Colonel level specialist yet, the only class where that's the case actually. So let's promote Zucchini, once again accompanied by Smoothie, to perhaps take some damage should we receive some.
My kind will do whatever is needed.
At this point then, we can celebrate Mox's final promotion of the game. Thankfully, he's also only injured for 5 days, so he should be back with us soon. For skills, meanwhile, I'll have to admit, the kernel level skills are all a bit underwhelming in my opinion. We have Manual Override, an ability that once activated lowers the cooldown of all other abilities by 1 turn, and while the Skirmisher does have quite a few abilities with cooldowns, neither one of them are really game-changing, so in my opinion this is not really worth grabbing. At the cost of 25 ability points, Battle Lord is also quite expensive. However, if we reveal enough enemies, it can be very powerful, as it gives Mox a free action after every enemy action, alien ruler style if you will, with the big caveat that we tend to not really give our enemies actions in the first place. That is also my logic behind forgoing the last 2 abilities here. Judgment costs 25 points and is only triggered when we are targeted by an attack, which again we like to avoid if at all possible, and at this stage in the game that's actually not too difficult. Return Fire then pretty much has the same requirement, and thus the same reason for not picking it, although admittedly taking both abilities together would make for an interesting Skirmisher tank build. Now, despite skipping most of the kernel level stuff here, we are not done yet. Let's grab Retribution next. This essentially gives the Skirmisher their very own Blade Storm, however, due to the aim penalties applied, it's not quite as powerful. What is always useful, meanwhile, is the ability to give someone else an extra action, especially since Mox only needs 1 of his action points to deal damage. Once again though, this is not exactly an absolutely vital ability for the Skirmisher. It is just nice to have, I think. As you can see then, we have quite a few more things here that we could unlock. However, I think this build will be more than sufficient for anything the aliens can throw at us at this point. And so let's head back and keep scanning, which then also almost immediately brings up the monthly Guerilla Ops. As I had expected, this time it's only 2 of them. The first one here featuring 13 enemies, allowing us to counter the collateral damage dark event and rewarding us with supplies. It also features specters though, which might be problematic for what we have planned, so we will be going to New Mexico instead, where we will find only 10 enemies. Those enemies will also be surrounded by explosives, which might make the whole thing a bit easier. Also, there's a Gatekeeper present, which we might want to take note of.
Setting course for the Mexican Regional Tract.
Commander, I've got trace chemical readings throughout that area showing a mix of volatile compounds. If we're not careful, that whole place could end up on fire.
Now, what do we have planned today? Well, this is what we have planned today. The Psi Operative has not really received a whole lot of love over the series. And no, we are not going to attempt a solo Psi Operative run today. In my experience, succeeding at that requires a lot of luck with things that you can't really control. Things like a mission type, the order in which you trigger enemy pods, and then succeeding at mind controls that are not guaranteed. I'll talk a bit more about that as we go along. I'm not saying it's impossible, but compared to the Ranger solo run we did with Starfall 2 episodes ago, it is much more risky. So call me a coward, but I don't dare take that risk. Instead, now that we finally have some more Illyrium, we can grab the Alien Psi Amp, leaving us with only 2 more weapons to purchase until we have everything, although, as you can see, at the moment we don't quite have the Illyrium required for both. That Psi Amp, by the way, giving both of our operatives a whopping 40-point boost to their Psi abilities, which, interestingly enough, are a little higher for Esteban Flores here. Nonetheless, I think both he and Matt Lewin will have the chance to do some great work here today.
Sky Ranger deployed.
In position for deployment.
We just got a tip from a resistance contact in the field. A high-ranking Advent officer was spotted moving through the area with limited escorts. This could be a chance for us to disrupt their current operations and throw off their command structure. Your orders are to eliminate that officer with extreme prejudice. Menace 1-5, we're tracking the Advent General and his escorts, but we don't have an exact fix on their location. Sweep the area and eliminate the target along with any other hostiles that stand in your way.
Remember, Commander, there are extremely volatile materials scattered throughout this area.
We need to make sure our troops are clear of any possible explosions.
Well, actually we don't, because both of our operatives here have the Fortress ability, rendering them immune to explosive damage. That might be a small advantage on our path to locating the Advent Field Commander, so with no time to waste, let's get moving.
Got a hostile squad here.
Right, we've got our first two enemies, an Advent officer, this one not the commander we're looking for, as well as a stun lancer. Now, very importantly, as soon as we engage them and reveal ourselves, the mission timer will start, which is why we will hold off on that until we are in the absolute best situation possible, and that means we want to set an Overwatch ambush where they detect us on their turn.
Ruling. Gotta cover Overwatch.
This move right here was in fact already very close. The only thing saving us from getting detected was Potato Lewin having cover on both sides and Esteban Flores being sufficiently far away.
Heading there now. Roger, eyes on.
And so our enemies begin the return trip, which we should be able to use to sneak in a position where I'm pretty sure they will detect us. So as soon as they make their way around the corner here, we should be able to open fire.
Eyes on their eyes. We're busted. That's how it's done.
And there we go, perfect start so far. The Advent officer goes down with both reaction shots finding their target. The Lancer meanwhile has hidden behind the corner but is definitely not safe there. Even without a scope, switched out in favor of a repeater, Matt Lewin has a guaranteed hit here.
That armor's tough.
And that armor won't be much of an issue for Esteban Flores, although even without AP rounds he would be guaranteed the kill.
Check it before you get too close. We're picking up an inbound Advent transport. The aliens are going to try and extract the general from the AO. Don't let them get on board that ship. Damn it, find some cover!
Alright, like I said, as soon as we engage, the enemies launch the transport to evac the Advent Field Commander. To make matters worse, we have also attracted the attention of 3 Archons, who are now standing right between us and that evac zone. 4 turns until the evac shuttle arrives is also not a whole lot of time, especially so since we will waste one more turn here without doing any actual damage, as we cast stasis on the Archon in the middle here to ensure that they remain close to that explosive barrel. In addition, this also ensures that one Mimic Beacon is enough to keep us safe on this turn. Deployed right next to the barrel here, it should hopefully force the other 2 Archons to get a bit closer. And indeed, here's Archon number 1 moving in for the melee strike. The 8 points of damage here, the reason why we had to put one of the Archons in stasis.
People down here! We're near the objective. Target identity confirmed. That's the general. Take him out before they can escape. We won't get another shot at this. I've got eyes on an Advent position.
So, looks like we have also already spotted the Advent Field Commander, accompanied by a heavy mech. For the most part, however, I think we will stick to the plan here. Luring the Archons into our little trap has worked beautifully, so time to spring it.
I guess that'll be okay.
What we will do here is launch a Void Rift. Together with the explosion, this will deal some good damage, and also has the chance to cause further effects like panic or mind control. Okay, so unfortunately none of the aforementioned effects actually happen. Not even a single Archon panicking, that's the least I had hoped for. But I guess we'll just have to deal with that, and we do have a second Void Rift ready to go with Matt Lewin. However, before we launch it, let's make sure that the Advent General stays right where they are.
Psionically shielded.
And with the field commander out of the picture for one turn, it's time for Void Rift number 2.
The rift opens.
And that's more like it, we get the first mind control on attempt number 2 here. Sadly though, the other 2 Archons continue to remain unaffected. Still, this saves us from having to take damage from multiple sources this turn, as only the second Archon here can now attack Potato Lewin.
Looks a little ugly.
And don't worry too much about the mech moving in here. You might recall that I mentioned something earlier about explosive immunity.
They're flanking my position!
So, the mech dealing some damage, but only to the Archon. The field commander meanwhile still in our sights. However, with only 2 turns left until the enemy transport arrives, it's not entirely sure for how much longer. So let's move Esteban into position and deploy a Null Lance, conveniently placed so that it hits both Archon and field commander.
You can't run from my power.
And that's the Archon dealt with, unfortunately only 11 points of damage to the commander, which means we now need max damage from Matt Lewin, who will repeat the entire process.
Head now. You cannot hide.
Alright, once again only 11 points of damage, and that means the field commander survives this turn. Not a terrible tragedy by any means, but certainly a bit inconvenient. On the bright side, we now have a marker in the fog of war always telling us where they are, while the heavy mech is not exactly getting any smarter. So, we have one more turn here until the enemy transport will arrive, and for the moment at least, the fight is not too stressful. I would say let's make the most out of that situation and take the field commander out right here and now. We're moving Matt right next to the explosive barrel here, hoping that the mech will target him again and damage itself in the process, while Mr. Lewin makes use of the fact that we have equipped him with the blaster launcher.
Can't hide for this one.
Menace 1-5, kill confirmed. That's how it's done. We need to clear the area of any remaining hostiles. We can't allow them to recover the General's body.
Alright, and with that, the biggest threat on this mission, the timer, has successfully been defeated.
What's over there?
Let us now take aim at the mech. Once again, Esteban's shot here will completely bypass all of its armor.
They're falling back!
Unfortunately then, despite being a mindless robot, the mech does not stand its ground, and since alien units in this game tend to retreat towards other alien units, this might be what's waiting for us in the shadows behind the mech here. After all, we have yet to detect the Gatekeeper, and there are only 3 more undiscovered enemies on this map. Well, I guess there is only one way to find out.
I'm trusting you here. Got some advent here.
And indeed, there we are, with all the remaining hostiles on this mission now discovered. This pod, by the way, the one you'd hope to pull first in a solo Psi Operative run. As you can see, that is far from guaranteed, sometimes even impossible, depending on the map's layout. Why you would hope to do so is because of the potential effects of a mind control on the Gatekeeper, which, if turned over to our side, is of course a formidable ally, if only for soaking up huge amounts of damage. However, and this is the next reason why a solo Psi Operative run is extremely dangerous, even with a Tier 3 Psi Amp and a 100-point Psi ability score, mind-controlling a Gatekeeper with a will score of 120 is not guaranteed.
Give in to me. Missed.
And indeed, the mind control fails, and if Esteban were alone out here, this would now put him in a very precarious situation. Luckily though, he is not.
Give in to me.
And despite the lower Psi score, Matt's attempt against the Purifier here is guaranteed. Nonetheless, unfortunately, the Gatekeeper comes after us, summoning a gateway, dealing 6 points of damage to both our operatives. And to make matters even worse, it also reanimates the Advent Officer as a Psi zombie. On the bright side, the mind-controlled Purifier seems to be enough of a distraction for the Stun Lancer here, who, as you can see, can't even hit the target. And with 14 hit points and 3 points of armor, the Purifier should therefore be able to soak up a bit more damage, especially since the mech then also misses. And so, with that Purifier hopefully able to stand their ground for another turn or two, let us for now focus on the Gatekeeper and its zombie. Thanks to the high ground, Potato Lewin can quickly take care of the latter. Our Purifier then can throw an incendiary bomb at the Stun Lancer, not only dealing damage but also setting them on fire, which then disables their melee attack. And finally, Esteban stays exactly where he is. His Disruptor Rifle is guaranteed to crit against psionic enemies, so we have the chance here to remove about half of the Gatekeeper's hit points in one attempt. As a response, the Gatekeeper immediately closes its shell again. The Stun Lancer also takes 3 more points of burning damage at the beginning of the enemy turn, which then starts with the Gatekeeper immediately opening again in order to launch its powerful Consume melee attack, but it misses.
That was close.
And that brings us to the Lancer, who now behaves quite unexpectedly, all of a sudden able to flank Matt Lewin. And despite the high ground advantage, the shot connects and would have killed our Psi Operative if it weren't for his very own sustainability. Despite his survival, however, the mind control is broken. On one hand, not as much of a problem because we are also immune to fire damage, but it does of course remove the Purifier as our meat shield. The mech then, for a change, using its gun, but only to lay down suppression. This, as you can see here, reducing Esteban's hit chance by a whopping 35%, and what I did next was probably also not the ideal way to handle the situation, as dropping a stasis on the mech here does of course get rid of the danger of any potential reaction shots. Problem is, and this is something that I simply forgot about, it does not actually remove suppression itself. And so the firing now stops, but Esteban's aim is still negatively impacted, so quick change of plans, we will now use a Rage Strike against the Gatekeeper, just for a tiny bit of damage.
That armor's tough.
Afterwards then, with the Gatekeeper closed again and the aim penalty still applied, we only have a 47% hit chance, and that I think is just not good enough, so instead let's take out the Lancer with the Shredstorm cannon.
Here comes trouble.
That of course leaves the Gatekeeper active, and with Matt here not able to survive any more damage, let's put stasis on it too. The Purifier alone won't be able to do us any harm.
Under my protection.
And so we survive the turn completely unscathed. However, we will not be able to protect ourselves this way once again, and that means it's probably high time that we take out the Gatekeeper. Thankfully, even in its closed state, the high ground advantage here gives us an almost guaranteed hit. Despite the critical then, it remains floating at only 2 hit points, but we get lucky with the hair trigger, and so we can finally take it out for good. Now, this still leaves us in a slightly precarious situation, as Matt Lewin still only has 1 hit point, And, well, the mech might eventually decide that it's time to use its gun, and that could spell disaster for him. So I think the safest bet for Potato Lewin here is to just retreat, out of sight, out of mind, at least, hopefully.
Affirmative.
The Purifier then, seemingly with no idea what to do whatsoever. The mech meanwhile does exactly what I had feared it would do, but since Esteban has not yet used his sustainability, we would have been able to tank even a fatal blow. In this case though, the shot misses entirely, and with that I would say that we are pretty much at the finish line. At this point, killing the mech is guaranteed.
It's dead. It has to be dead.
And since we are still immune to fire damage, and that is the only type of damage the Purifier can deal, the fight is pretty much over at this point. So, for good measure, let's launch a Soulfire, which will even give Matt some health back.
I'm inside your head.
One more completely harmless blast from the flamethrower later, and here we are. Let's make sure that Esteban is a good distance away from the enemy, before he then launches a Soulfire of his own to end the fight.
Your mind is your weakness.
I got it. Right?
We have confirmation. Mission accomplished.
And there we go. Even with 2 Psi Operatives, perhaps not as smooth as that solo ranger mission with Starfall. Then again, the Psi Operative class is also built much more around their ability to take damage and still survive. Still, I think this mission was a very good showcase of why I was so hesitant to go this alone with just 1 soldier. In my experience, in most of these solo Psi Operative runs you can see on YouTube, players tend to get very lucky. Like I said earlier, hitting that 70% mind control on a Gatekeeper is usually what makes or breaks such a run. So forgive me for not going all out with this one.
Tragedy struck today as another loyal Advent citizen was lost to XCOM criminals. A memorial service is mandatory for all citizens who maintained daily contact.
And there we go, our heroes return back home, Red Fighter Flores only wounded for 5 days, Potato Lewin meanwhile out of action for 13. Bond-wise, the 2 of them will also not form anything anytime soon, especially considering that we probably only have 2 more videos left in this series.
Hello, Commander.
We'll talk about that in just a second. For now, we can celebrate the arrival of engineer Andrew Zacharias, submitted as always by one of my lovely patrons. This one was created by Zylander, and his biography reads as follows. Before the invasion, Andrew was a brilliant robotic engineer in France. Sometimes a little too reckless, he had the tendency to build things that he could not always control. That did not stop him from continuing, even after being fired. When the aliens attacked, he was soon contacted by Raymond Shen from the XCOM project and offered a fascinating job. But after the disbanding of XCOM and the disappearance of Shen, Andrew has yet to find another project he's interested in. And well, seems to me like Andrew is in luck. Just days before the end of this campaign, he has found another calling. At the moment, I think we will in fact be done with this after 2 more episodes. We might get really unlucky and get another unfortunately timed mission thrown in there, but I really doubt it. So get ready for what is probably already part 1 of the big finale next week. Until then, as always, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.